game. Devin Booker coming off that poor game 3 with just 10. I think he's one of my favorite players to watch because everything feels like it's under complete control at all times, and it is a vast arsenal of scoring chances, opportunities. Float game, Steve. There to rebound his own miss on occasion as well. 8 of 15 from the floor. Some hustle plays in this one for the Bucks. Significant. +6 on second chance points, +8 in transition. Something that Tim Legler was talking about earlier in the series, about the Bucks not getting to 50-50 balls. Coach Bud talked about that after one of the losses in Phoenix. Bucks were better in this one.
About them outworking us for 4 or 5 days. That's the freaking deal. They're outworking us. Tired is not in our vocabulary. We got to go get it.
Well, Booker took his coach's counsel. 7 of 7 from the floor. All 7 shots contested in the third, and it didn't make a difference. Booker had 18 points. And the Suns were able to build a 6-point lead on the road. Enormous game 4. Hang on to that lead. Go home with a chance to try to close it out. But Booker got into foul trouble, had to go to the bench. He was back on the floor for this one. That's not called a foul on Drew Holiday, which it was twice. Again, I'm sure Suns fans probably look at the 5th foul and go, what was that? Whatever the case, it ends up being a bucket on the Giannis putback. And this was really the story late as Chris Middleton, so patient. That mid-range game, find your spot, probe the defense, get to that clean airspace, tying the game, giving them the lead. It's a 4-point lead late. Booker unable to get that scoop shot to drop. Middleton fouled. He goes for 40 in this one. And the Bucks hold on after a 33-point fourth quarter gives them the victory. And you see that final 2:15, that winning time, right, in any game, but the playoffs, especially the finals, who's going to step up? Who's going to deliver? Who will rise to the moment? The answer tonight was Chris Middleton. 10 of his career playoff high, 40 came in the final 2:15 as he outscored the Suns by 6. That was the final margin in this game. We welcome in Doris Burke, who called the game on ESPN Radio. And look, we talk about Middleton's performance. That was obvious, right? Sometimes, though, it's not how many, but when. And I asked Chris when he was on with us about the Connaughton 3 that gave them the lead. You're in the building. Help me understand, how does that change the direction and the feeling?
The 3 threes he hit were massive. And consider, here's a guy who's never going to handle the basketball. They're never going to call a play for him. But Pat Connaughton, please be shot ready when they double team Giannis Antetokounmpo. And to have the chops in this game with perhaps your season and your finals championship on the line, Pat Connaughton steps in confidently and knocks down massive threes. Incredible.
Chris Paul, and I ask you as the handles and the point guard that we know that you still got on demand when called upon. What happened to Chris Paul tonight? He looked out of sorts.
They are not walking away with an NBA championship with Chris Paul at the level he's played at over the last 2 games. Consider in prior 2 rounds, this guy had 14 total turnovers. He's already above that number through 4 games. And it's mistakes of finding his way to bad spots on the floor, leaving his feet with no decision in mind. It's impossible for me to sort of wrap my mind around where Chris Paul is turning the basketball over, Scott. I'm so unaccustomed to seeing the point guard make these kinds of mistakes. Something tells me in Game 5 he will respond.
I have a feeling I'm going to ask every guest we have for their perspective of the Giannis block, just because he does the outrageous so often that we become accustomed. But that was just, you tell me, you're in the building. What did he do?
I think both JB and I leaned back and we were absolutely stunned that he made a play seemingly out of nowhere. And listen, it's so funny because we spoke to Pat Connaughton yesterday and he was saying everybody's talking about the 40 points. don't forget what he does in help defense situations, and that's just a massive block at the absolute most critical time. Just a special play by a two-time MVP.
How he didn't foul him. Well, Jeff talked about the ability to redirect and the ability to get there and make the block with his length, but how he didn't foul, I have no idea, but I don't think he did. Doris, as always, your time's appreciated, and we look forward to talking again. We've got some thoughts from Coach Bud on that block. Thank you, Doris. Here's Coach Bud Budenholzer.
Their connection in the pick and roll game, their ability to make plays is very good. And Giannis just made a spectacular block, a spectacular play. His ability to cover ground and get to that point, get to the top. That's an NBA Finals special moment right there. And we're going to need more of them. His impact on the game on both ends of the court. It's a big-time block. That's what he's capable of.
When you have that kind of a lead in the fourth, if we can just hold on to the ball and get good possessions, you feel like you can at least hold it there. And so, I got to look at the film and see, was it schematics or was it just, their defense? I'm not quite sure yet, but we certainly had a lot of self-inflicted stuff tonight.
Michael Wilbon joins us now. Michael, you've seen so many of these, and the dust is still settling, so our vision, our focus maybe isn't crystal clear. Monty's going to go back and look at the tape. But as I ask you right now, about a 33-21 fourth quarter, where a Suns 6-point lead turns into a 6-point loss, and I ask you, Michael, what happened? What would your answer be?
The same thing that happened all game, Scott. We have talked about the Suns almost never beating themselves, right? The whole season, they just don't beat themselves. That's one of the themes coming in to the finals, because it was true in every series. They beat themselves tonight. And the fourth quarter is no different from the rest of the game. You look at those two 17-5 margins, 17-5 offensive rebounding, Milwaukee over Phoenix. Okay, you can understand that. The Suns are small, and without Saric, they're smaller. And that's going to happen. They're going to get beat on the boards, particularly by a team with the strength and size of Milwaukee. But 17 turnovers to 5 turnovers. The Bucks protected the ball, and the Suns just gave it away. These turnovers, and you heard Monty refer to it, they weren't forced. This is like tennis with unforced errors.
Right.
Unforced. Stepping on the baseline a couple of times, stepping on the sideline a couple of times. Chris Paul had 5 turnovers to only 7 assists. And they just seemed weak with the ball. They seemed tired. Again, Monty addressed that and said, we don't have time for tired. But they played that way. And so as great as Middleton was, and he was great, and as great as Giannis's block was, I just got a text. I probably shouldn't mention this because I don't know if it's on the record or off the record, but it's complimentary. It should be on the record. It's from a coach whose jersey hangs in the rafters here, so you can sort of figure that out.
Yeah.
Who just said, this is one of the greatest blocks I've ever seen. It's one of the greatest blocks anybody's ever seen. You start screaming. I was sitting here with Richard Jefferson and Perk, and you're breathless because you can't believe what he's gone up and done to Ayton. Not some 6'7" dude. Man, he did this against DeAndre Ayton, who's having a great playoffs himself, though not scoring tonight. But those turnovers and that offensive rebounding, to me, if you're Milwaukee, you got to feel you have an advantage. You found something. The rebounding can stay because it's size involved. But those turnovers, the Suns have got a real problem if they can't protect the ball any better than that. They should be going home, Scott, to play for an NBA championship. And they somewhere between let it slip and handed it over. And I guess we're going to talk about that for the next 2 days as we figure out, before Game 5, can the Suns, rally themselves? It's got to be a really disappointing loss. And I think Monty knows that, which is why he made the comments he made to his team immediately in that locker room.
And I want to follow with that, Michael, because you've seen so many of these, and I smile as I ask this question because through the years that I've been doing this show, you and I have talked about these moments where there is this tendency to want to take what has happened most recently and apply it to what's about to happen next. And that's often a fool's errand because things change from day to day and game to game. That said, do you feel like, having watched these 4 games that have all been won by the home team, you have any sense of clarity about what will happen next?
No. No, if you tell me that Milwaukee's going to get that kind of, I mean, that's from the Bill Russell archives, that block, right, of Ayton's dunk. If you tell me there's going to be that kind of game-changing play in the final, whatever it was, minute and change, okay, I can tell you that Milwaukee has momentum, but we don't know we're going to see that. If you can tell me, I mean, I don't know what happened, but Chris Paul wasn't himself tonight. He didn't have it. Now, anybody gets a game, even a future Hall of Famer, who's played like he has played this whole postseason, I don't care who you are, you can get one where you just don't have it that night. I thought Chris was so determined to set up his teammates in the first half that he never got into a rhythm. And by the time he needed to, was probably late in the game, and he had done that. He knew he had to help Book get going to where he was going to have one of those great Devin Booker nights, and he did. But if you can tell me that you're going to have a similar script, sure, you can read it and say, oh, yeah, here's what's going to happen. I don't believe that. I don't believe Chris Paul has come this far to simply not have it in Game 5 at home in Phoenix. I don't know if the Booker can have 42 again, but he may not need to. Other Suns players, because they didn't really help Booker out the entire game, didn't help him out early tonight. Jay Crowder hit 3 threes, but I think he was 3 for 9. So the Suns are going to have to really go back and examine. Just one quick thing, Scott, that, watching, you mentioned watching all these games I've watched and covered all these games. Winning a championship requires suffering. Unless you're Irvin Johnson, everybody else, maybe not Tim Duncan. Okay, so there's 2 guys in the history of the game who haven't suffered en route to winning a championship. That means LeBron, who had that series where he got just stuffed by San Antonio. It means Michael Jordan, who lost to the Pistons 3 times en route to finally, slaying the dragon that tormented him. And one thing I thought about, I picked the Suns to win this game. And I said to Perk, during late in the game, I just said, the Suns are going to give this away. And it requires suffering. Winning a championship in this sport more than any other. It's not like pro football where people go from last to first. It just isn't. In this sport, the greatest players in the game, how many times did Jerry West lose in the finals? To one team, no less. It requires suffering. The Suns are feeling that tonight. I don't care what brave face they put on the next, 72 hours between now and Game 5. They suffered tonight because they know they should be playing at home for a championship. But that's the way this sport is, and I think that's the glory of it, the greatness of it, the drama of it. Richard Jefferson is standing right here next to me. He knows. He's been through that and then got to the other side of it. And that's suffering, man. I mean, if you're the Suns and you had that lead and you got closers, you got Devin Booker and CP3, probably in the reverse order. What are you going to do? How are you going to rally that yourselves between now and then?
Suffering is the truth, and so is this. Anything worth having is on the other side of something difficult. Winning championships is hard, and it will be hard for either of these teams to win 2 of the remaining 3 games and become NBA champions in 21. Michael, thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Scott.
Always.